What's going on, everybody? Casey Veggies checking back in with my second video. Got some nice positive response on the first video that I did, so I appreciate everyone who checked that out. Man, it's been hot these past couple days, and nothing says Seattle summer like all my favorite swimming holes being overrun by people. But another good indicator is ripe tomatoes on the vine, and with the heat that we've been seeing these past couple days, starting to see some color on these heat-loving, summer garden staples. So with that, I just wanted to share a couple of easy techniques that I've learned over the years, to help with successful tomato growth in our maritime Pacific Northwest climate. So come check it out. So the first technique is about watering. Like most plants, tomatoes need water at their roots, but even more so, they have an extensive root system that really does need a lot of water. So it's helpful to place your hose at the base of the tomato plant and really water the soil, and the base of the tomato plant thoroughly. Maybe for 3 to 5 minutes per watering session every few days, every 3 days, rather than a short 30-second drink every single day. That way water's gonna soak in the soil, it's gonna infiltrate into the soil, and really kind of soak those extensive roots that tomato plants have, getting them the water that they need. The other kind of piece of this is that really tomatoes don't like to get really wet on their leaves and stems, and they really don't like a wet, getting wet, drying out, getting wet, drying out. It can lead to disease and other things, and they don't like to get splashed by soil. There's pathogens and things in the soil that can cause tomato plants to get diseases like a late blight, which is a speckled kind of black specks on your stem and leaves, and this comes from fungus and other things in the soil that get splashed onto their leaves and stems. So a way to avoid that is to water right at the base of your tomato plant, and then just leave the hose there. Kind of turn it on a low water pressure, and position it right at the base of your tomato plant, and go do something else for 3 to 5 minutes and let that tomato plant really soak up that water. That way you're not splashing the leaves, you're not splashing the stem, and you're getting the water directly to the source, and to the roots. So check this out. So I got my hose on low pressure, and I'm just gonna let it sit there, right? Getting right at the base. It's not splashing the leaves, it's not splashing the fruit, it's not splashing the stem, and it's getting the water directly to the source, to the roots. So I'm gonna go do something else for about 3 minutes and check back in. Okay, so it's been about 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes. So let me go check back in on my tomato plant. You'll see it's still getting that water, and it's saturated pretty nicely. So I think that's probably good. Maybe spray around the plant a little bit, just kind of getting that soil wet. Again, avoiding splashing the stem and the leaves. But that feels pretty good. And I think I can be pretty confident that my root system got a good thorough soaking. And assuming, it stays nice and 70s, low 80s or whatever, I can do this once every 3 days and really kind of check back in on it and see how it's doing. But that's the way I water my tomato plants. I try to avoid just spraying them like you would maybe other plants in the garden, and really kind of focus the water right at the base of the tomato plant and saturate that soil thoroughly. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so the second technique I wanted to talk about is pruning your tomato plant. For this exercise, you just need a pair of garden shears, and then you can get to work. If left to their own devices, tomato plants, even if you stake them up with a tomato cage, they're just gonna go crazy. They're gonna put a lot of energy into growing that plant really big. They're gonna get bushy, there's gonna be stems everywhere, and it's gonna be a headache to try to deal with, to try to maneuver around, to try to access watering at the base like we talked about. So one way to kind of avoid that is by just pruning it throughout the year, taking off the stems that the stems and the leaves that don't have fruits on them or don't have little blossom flowers that are going to turn into fruits. So you can see here, this stem here has some fruits on this little vine, but it's got a bunch of little vines like this coming off without fruits on it or without flowers on it. And you can just snip those right off. It's not even gonna really harm your tomato plant. What it's gonna do is, again, it's going to help clean it up, help make it manageable as you try to pick fruits later in the summer, as well as water. But it's also going to focus the energy on fruit production and ripening those fruits rather than growing your plant really big. So as you take those stems off, especially ones right around the base of your plant, we talked about earlier with the watering technique that soil splashing up and hitting the stem or hitting your leaves could result in a fungal disease. It's called late blight. A good way to avoid that is to prune stems coming off the main tomato plant that are hanging down and touching the soil. It's not a perfect system. Some you can't get, but if you kind of look around the base and just kind of trim plants that are going to be hanging down and touching the soil, you can avoid splashing, avoid the water splashing up and the soil splashing up. So I took this big piece off because it was hanging down, and I can do the same kind of all around. Just do this for a minute. You see that? There's no, obviously, fruit, there's no blossoms, there's no flowers that are gonna be tomatoes later in the year. So I can just take that off. You see that there, or maybe you can't, but that's a small tomato coming, so I'm not going to take this stem off because this could get big and ripe later in the summer. If we get into late August and this, these flowers are still here and they haven't really turned into tomatoes that I think are going to turn into ripe tomatoes by the end of the growing season, so call it late September, I might just cut this off early, and that way, I'm not having my plant focus energy on tomatoes that aren't going to ripen up, and I'm going to really focus the energy on the tomatoes that I do think are going to ripen up to help them ripen. When you cut off these blossoms, obviously it'll take the energy that it's getting from the sun and focus it in on ripening up fruits that actually have a chance. So that's my technique around pruning. You can do it a handful of times throughout the year and just kind of maintain and keep your tomato plant under control, because again, left to its own devices, it's gonna put a lot of focus into growing really big and really crazy, and you're not gonna be able to access your base to water, and you're not gonna be able to access your fruit to pick. So when you prune it, it just helps it stay healthy and helps it focus the energy on ripening up red tomatoes. Okay. Well, here's the bounty. I had one tomato today. The better one that I picked last night, shooting my first take of this video, was really impressive, but unfortunately messed up the dialogue, so I had to take a second take, and all I had was one tomato left. So, but I harvested my first lemon cucumber of the day, a nice beet, some salad greens, arugula, and so I got the fixings for a nice salad for lunch today. And I'm excited about that. So nice garden bounty. But just to reiterate, talked about two techniques today in regards to kind of tending your tomato plants. One around watering at the base, not splashing the leaves and the stems. Watering for an extended period of time, 3 to 5 minutes every 3 days. If you're growing tomatoes in a container, you may want to accelerate this. You may want to do it every couple days if it's really hot. The water leaks out of containers quicker than it does, just soil in the ground. So that's a note. But and then the second technique, we talked about pruning your tomato plant, taking off stems that don't have fruits on it, don't have blossoms on it, little flowers, and really cleaning up, managing your tomato plant, and focusing that energy on fruit production and then ripening those fruits. So I've had success growing tomatoes using those two techniques, and hopefully you do too. So thanks for checking it out. Peace. Oh, and remember, there's no one right way to garden, so don't take my word for it. Trial and error yourself, figure out what works for you, and report back. I'd love to hear what works in your garden. So, all right, thanks.